Hi, everyone. Welcome to Understanding Your Stress Response. My name is Carrie Cussin DeFusco, and I'm going to be guiding you through this workshop style video today, and where we are going to talk about stress, what it feels like in the body, how our body approaches stress, and what we can do about it. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. So a little bit more about me and my background. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a certified yoga teacher. I've been teaching yoga for about 5 years to kids and families, adults, individuals, groups, and so on, in a variety of settings, from private homes to community centers to yoga studios to schools and libraries and so on. So here's just my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me for anything at all, and let's get started. So what is stress? Right? Stress is a normal reaction to everyday pressures, but it can become unhealthy when it upsets your day-to-day functioning. So we all have a certain range of stress. It can be quite benign, things that bother us that seem pretty mundane through our day-to-day lives, from having to do chores around the house, to deadlines, to paying bills, to doing errands and things of that nature. And then on the other end of the spectrum, stress can be quite traumatic for some people after going through situations or events in their life that have caused them this sense of traumatic stress. So the different types of stress, we have 3 different kinds of stress: physiological, psychological, and social. So physiological stress, you might imagine on your body as something as simple as being on your feet all day, right? The stress of gravity on our bodies, to something a little bit more intense, such as a car accident and your body having to repair itself after that, or going through an illness or a sickness of some kind, and that stress on your body. Physiological or emotional stress is something that we each move through some degree of each day, from worry and anger to severe symptoms of mental illness. And finally, social stress, meaning interacting with others, having issues at work, right? We're social creatures, so we're bound to have some sort of stress in our relationships, no matter who we are. Right, so we ask the question now, why do some people stress more than others, right? So how a situation impacts a person is largely dependent on predisposing factors such as the individual's past experiences, their beliefs, their perceptions, their expectations, their level of distress tolerance, their values, and even their morals. So when we think of stress, or traumatic stress, a lot of us may think of the term post-traumatic stress disorder, or having post-trauma type symptoms. So again, when we think of PTSD, we might also first think of people who have engaged in active combat. They have served overseas, or in really high stress situations. So, for example, not all military service members who have engaged in combat are diagnosed with this formal PTSD or develop post-trauma symptoms. So whether one develops trauma reaction symptoms or not can be due to a multitude of reasons, some of which include the predisposing factors described above, in addition to the individual's ability to process their experience without the presence of significant avoidance. So that piece we'll talk about a little bit later, about our body and our mind's defense mechanisms, and how we need to process stress. We need to process trauma. However, our body does a really great job of trying to avoid that. And so, we think we're doing good by ourselves by not allowing ourselves to think of the trauma. However, we're holding it physically and mentally, and it's impacting our lives in different ways. So now let's dive into stress response versus stress reaction. Oftentimes, the difference between the two lies in a deep breath, a pause, or a brief moment of mindful presence. That moment can mean the difference between sending the entire situation or relationship soaring to greater heights or falling down a slippery slope. So reactions are instinctual and stem from the subconscious mind, right? There's no filtering process when you react in a situation. You're reacting on autopilot, which oftentimes kind of can come back to bite us. However, a lot of the time too, when we're acting on autopilot, we're doing our best and we're doing what our intuition tells us to do, what is right in that moment. So our intuition can also be built upon patterns that have kind of caused us trouble in the past. So that's why these practices that we'll talk about at the end, mindfulness practices, kind of allow us to dive deeper into ourselves and understanding our thought processes and how we perceive the world and how we perceive stress. So reactions are like a puppy, right, who hasn't been trained. And that untrained puppy is going to bark at every dog it sees. It's going to jump at every passing neighbor, and then he'll eat your dinner as soon as he sees it, right? So reactions are a product of what some researchers call our reptilian brain. Our reptilian brain, again, we're going to talk about it in just a few slides, is the oldest part of our brain that has been formed with this survival instinct. So even though now we are not facing as many survival instances as our ancestors once had in terms of getting food, maintaining shelter, staying away from predators, we have just a totally different host of stressors in our lives now. So responses are more thoughtful. When you respond, you first explore in your mind the possible outcomes of your reply before saying a word. You might weigh the pros and cons and consider what would be best for yourself and others in situations. This is certainly easier said than done, easier said than in practice. So integration is strengthened with our mind-body awareness. So acknowledging that your heart is racing, that you're tensing, and then choosing to respond. Once we become aware of our body's state and understanding its signals that we're sending us, we can choose a different way to respond to the situation. So here, responses are more like the well-trained and well-behaved dog who comes when you call him, barks only when there is a reason to bark, and waits patiently for his treat. This is certainly not my dog. I'm not sure about yours. Would you rather be the type of person who creates a calm and happy environment for people around you, like the well-behaved dog, or the kind of person who's a wild card, totally unpredictable and can cause the people around you stress, like the untrained puppy? Now, we certainly go from one side of the spectrum to the other because we are human, but acknowledging these parts of yourself is really important as we start to cultivate this self-awareness. So most of us, I'm sure, have heard the terms fight or flight. There's also the ideas of freezing and fainting, and this is all within our stress reaction. And so again, like our ancestors were once running from predators and really using their survival instinct in a different way than we do, today our stressors can be a host of different things, as I've already given quite a few examples, right? So fear of social situations, car accidents, different types of abuse, frequent moving from city to city or state to state, and so on. This can cause a lot of stress for our bodies, for our minds. And stress is one of those things too that we don't always know that we're carrying because of some of our defense mechanisms that we put up. So now we start to dive into this idea of reaction versus response, and what does it look like in the body? So our nervous system is comprised of a few different sections here, right? So if we look down to the right corner, we can see the two branches of our autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight. And then our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. So this is often kicked on when we are in a relaxed state or even sleeping overnight, when our body is able to heal itself, right? When you cut yourself one day and then you wake up the next day and you can already see that your body is starting to heal and close that wound. So it's interesting that our fight or flight system is talked about so much more frequently, and we understand what it is. However, this rest or digest system is really important, and it's something that we can access without having to go to sleep, right? It's something that we can actually kind of turn on with certain practices. So here, this is our stressed out Steve image, and I just kind of doodled around so we could follow the arrows a little bit easier here. So if we're looking at the left side of the screen, the left side of this body, we can see our stress reaction at play, and we can see that it has quite a lot more real estate than our stress response on the right side. So in brief, essentially, a person's reaction will be kicked on due to a host of those things that we talked about earlier. It's like, their beliefs, their morals, their perceptions, their experiences. And so when that stress reaction gets kicked on, it ignites or even shuts down a lot of the body's systems. So things like our immune system aren't really essential for our survival when we're in fight or flight. So our immune system becomes compromised. So if you've ever noticed that you are having a really stressful time at work or at home or in life in general, that you may feel more worn down and you're more likely to get a cold or feel ill. And so with chronic stress over time, this can start to break your physical body down in many different ways, from having high blood pressure, from eating the wrong foods that then cause different issues for you, and so on. And ultimately, it can lead to a breakdown, right? So the cycle can only go so far, and sometimes a person can break down in a variety of ways. So on the right side here, where we have this smaller bubble, this is our stress response. And once we start to learn how to ignite this response in our bodies and in our minds, we start to be able to allow stressful situations not to rule us, right, but become the driver of the bus once again. So when we realize that our body's getting tense, it's more of a preventative action rather than allowing this stress response to kind of run its course and then try to go back. This stress response is being present in the moment and making choices in that present moment that get you to a more desirable outcome. Okay, so just a caveat, I am not a neuroscientist, I am a social worker, but I find the study of neuroscience quite interesting and very useful and quite relevant into understanding our stress response. So this is just going to be a few brief slides about our brain and its system and how it functions with the rest of our body. So the limbic system is found in mammalian brain structures, so creatures like humans who live in social groups. And this controls the functions that are necessary for self-preservation and species preservation. So it regulates autonomic and endocrine function, particularly in response to emotional stimulus. And so the limbic system sets the level of arousal and is involved in motivation and reinforcing behaviors. So many of these areas are critical to particular types of our memory, and along with the reptilian brain, which also plays an important role in activating the fight or flight. So the amygdala is acting like the smoke detector. It makes no distinction between past and present, and it triggers powerful stress hormones and nervous system responses. So when it goes into overdrive, one is chronically scared that people hate them or out to get them, or just having these types of negative thoughts. So the thalamus, a filter or a gatekeeper, is the part of the brain that helps you stay focused on this presentation rather than the other sounds around you or what you're going to have for lunch today. So now we're going to move to the prefrontal cortex. We can see in this little picture here of the brain that we were just talking about our brainstem at the bottom of the image, and now we're kind of moving from the bottom to the top to this purple area. So the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex mediates complex cognitive functioning, including how the present relates to the past. And this area also acts as the watchtower, playing a vital role in the emergence of cognitive abilities during infancy and the detection of self-relevant information. And so finally, in this really brief introduction to the brain and its connection to the body, we move to the vagus nerve and start to understand the gut-brain axis just a bit here, right? Really surface level. So the vagus nerve is also called the wandering nerve. It's the longest nerve that we have in our body. So many branches of the vagal nerve connect to numerous organs like our brain, our lungs, our heart, our stomach, and our intestines. So have you ever felt that sensation of having butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous, right? So that is a real-time response of how our emotions impact our physical state. So we asked the question, top down or bottom up? Top down, meaning from the prefrontal cortex to the reptilian brain, helps to regulate messages from the medial prefrontal cortex, which is really difficult to do in young children as this part of their brain hasn't been formed yet completely. Then for bottom up, via the reptilian brain through breathing, movement, and touch. This works to change the relationship to bodily sensations. It's really helpful for those who act out or have this tendency to numb their sensations. And it brings awareness to present moment experiences and allows people to feel the fullness of life and feel pleasure rather than numbing every emotion. So we can combine top down to activate social engagement with bottom up to calm the physical tensions of the body through things like play, music, movement, joyful engagement, meditation, mindfulness, and so on. So any effective treatment for trauma or stress has to address sleep and appetite and touch and breathing and digestion and arousal, right? We know that neurons that fire together wire together. So when we allow these two parts of our brain to integrate with each other, we're helping ourselves to really be present with the full experience of our lives. Okay, let's stop. Stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. Breathe into your nose, breathe out of your nose, and notice how you feel. We've been talking a lot about how stress can negatively impact our body, and it's true. A lot of our illnesses or disorders can stem from stress. However, I'm not here to demonize stress, and I want to show another side, how stress can be helpful. It can be helpful for us to problem solve, to ask ourselves, what are our values and what really matters to us? It helps us to learn something new and adapt and keep us safe. So from stressful times can always come growth. We must remind ourselves to practice emotional first aid, to nurture the mind the same way that we nurture the body when we aren't feeling well. And one way we can do this on a daily basis in our everyday life is to practice mindfulness. Are we having a full mind or are we being mindful? So what is mindfulness? It's maintaining a present moment awareness of our thoughts, our feelings, our bodily sensations, and our surrounding environment. It also includes the intentions of nurturing positive states of mind such as kindness and compassion. Think heartfulness. What mindfulness is not. It's not being still and quiet, which can happen, but it isn't always the goal. It's not getting rid of thoughts or silencing or controlling your thinking. It's not really doing something, and it's not a discipline tool. We don't have to be happy or positive all the time, and it's not a religious practice. I really like this definition by Jon Kabat-Zinn, which says, mindfulness is to pay attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. These are some of the benefits of mindfulness and practicing for our mind, our body, and our spirit. Attitudes to adopt include gratitude, non-judging, letting go, patience, a beginner's mind, acceptance, trust, non-striving, and generosity. How can you start practicing mindfulness now? Chances are that you are already practicing mindfulness throughout your day. Moments when we are lost in thought, however, come all too frequently. They pull us out of the present moment and push us into the future or the past. We hardly ever settle into the present moment. When we do, we are more likely to feel at ease. So we can practice mindfulness by engaging with our 5 senses, our sight, our hearing, our smell, our taste, and our touch. We can also practice by paying attention to an anchor, something like your breath that is constant, or even a constant sound if you choose to listen to music while you're sitting quietly. So let's take a moment now just to practice anchoring into our breath. Sit tall. Try to have your feet on the floor, and maybe close your eyes. Breathing in and out through your nose, notice the sensations of your breath. Perhaps you feel a rise and fall through your belly or your chest. Maybe you can actually feel the air coming in and out of your nose. Continue to observe your breath as you inhale and exhale for another moment. Take one more breath. And open your eyes if they're closed. So deep breathing is something that we can do without needing to buy anything or go anywhere. And it helps to stimulate the vagus nerve. It helps bring us to the present moment and give us a greater awareness of our mind-body connection. We can also practice breath to movement exercises by bringing your hands up when you inhale, your hands down when you exhale, or there's a variety of breath exercises that you can do as a child or adult. We can also practice mindfulness meditation, again using our 5 senses. We can use a mantra or affirmation, something as simple as breathing in the words peace and breathing out the words love. So I'll leave you here with this quote from Jon Kabat-Zinn. We do not know what specific knowledge our children are going to need 10 or 20 years from now, because the world and their work, when they come to it, will be so different from ours. What we do know is that they will need to know how to pay attention, how to focus and concentrate, how to listen and learn, and how to be in wise relationship with themselves, including their thoughts and emotions and with others. Now, this quote is relevant to children and adults alike as we move forward in this fast-paced life. It's so important for us to remember how to listen to our bodies, to our emotions, and to each other. Here's a list of recommended reading. And sources from this presentation. So now that we've learned a bit about how our mind and our body can respond or react to stress, let's take a few moments to breathe together and release any tension that we may be holding now. Try to sit up tall in your seat. Have your feet firmly planted on the floor. Rest your hands on your lap and close your eyes. Sense your breath moving in your body. Trying your best to relax your forehead and your jaw. Letting your shoulders draw down away from your ears. Feel the breath moving in and out through your nose. And notice where else in your body your breath is present now. Notice thoughts as they come into your mind. And try your best to stay focused on your breath. We can let thoughts move down like leaves on a river. Letting them go easily. Breathing in and out. Another breath here. And then starting to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Blinking your eyes open when you're ready to. Thank you for that mindful moment. I hope you take as many as you need. I'll see you again soon. Take good care.